It's taken me more than 3 months, but I'm finally coming to the end of Season 1. And I gotta say, the MLP staff gave us quite a gem to end their first season with. So much of this episode feels like they have stepped up their production more than anything they had released thus far. The Best Night Ever gives us more of an in-depth look into each of the main six, while at the same time doesn't have to rush any part of its story. As the episode begins, we see Twilight performing a new spell by turning an apple into a carriage. I like this clever reference to Cinderella because it just adds to the fairy tale aspect of what this episode is all about. Or at least the fairy tale that the main six expect that it will be about. And even turning mice into horses makes an interesting little gimmick. Makes me wonder if Twilight could use that spell on other ponies. In the next scene, we see Spike getting excited about spending the evening with the others, to which they all seem less than interested in doing. Which again makes for a good setup for how this episode all comes together at the end. When they arrive at Canterlot, we get a rather fantastic song that makes the evening all the more grand. Each of the main six get their chance to shine here, and we get some great harmonies from the choir in the background. And even more than that, this song actually makes for a great setup in the episode as well. Even if you haven't seen any other episodes in MLP, you'd still be able to pick up on what the main six have been hoping to do at the Gala all season long. Even though the Ticketmaster and Suited for Success do a good job in setting up this season finale, this episode can still function quite well all on its own due to the At the Gala song. And to top it all off, I think this is actually my favorite piece of music from all of Season 1. I like many of the songs from this first season, and there are certainly some other standout pieces like Winter Wrap-Up and Art of the Dress. However, At the Gala is the grandest sounding piece overall. It always leaves a feeling of being part of something truly amazing each time I watch this scene. I'm sure that I'll be enjoying this piece many years from now. As we see each of the main six beginning their evening, they are of course ecstatic with how well everything has turned out. I particularly enjoy Rarity trying to keep herself prim and proper right in the middle of all her fangirl moments with Prince Blueblood. And of course Rainbow trying to keep herself calm and cool right in the middle of all of her fangirl moments with the Wonderbolts. Now, the evening doesn't turn out quite as good as each of the main six are expecting. We see Prince Blueblood is completely self-centered, which I actually find a bit ironic. The first stallion we know of for Rarity to develop a crush on is of course someone that she sees as prim, proper, and handsome. But I find it interesting that Rarity actually sought after someone who also shares a couple of her weaknesses as well. We've seen what happens to Rarity when she is in the spotlight, being praised by so many others. And she ended up having some self-centered moments of her own because of all that attention. Now, it is perfectly understandable that Rarity ends her evening by blowing up at the prince, as his behavior really is deplorable. But I have to wonder if Rarity might have seen a bit of her own worst behavior in the prince, if even for just a moment. Such a realization would certainly add some maturity to Rarity. I also find it interesting just how quickly Rainbow's own desires for spending time with the Wonderbolts leads to frustration. Just how often does one dream about being with a celebrity without ever realizing how many others share that same dream? And after a while, even Rainbow starts succumbing to the need for attention by creating a situation where someone needs saving. All of the main six end up having their moment of doubt, but still feel that determination to overcome their challenges. And I like how this episode shows such a realistic portrayal of how the young often have these unrealistic expectations about how life works, and even their stubbornness in the face of everyone trying to tell them otherwise. I am a bit curious as to why all the animals seem afraid of Fluttershy at the start, though. This is supposed to be her natural gift, and yet none of the animals will even give her that chance. I suppose it could be that Fluttershy's gala dress made her a little more intimidating, or perhaps these animals have been trained to clear out whenever a pony comes near them, so as not to disturb any ponies wandering the grounds. But for whatever the case, I am rather intrigued by Fluttershy's mental break here. I've mentioned before about my thoughts on Fluttershy's past and how she may have been deprived of love as a young filly. And watching this scene again just seems to reinforce that theory. I mean, why else would Fluttershy have been so completely stressed out over the animals rejecting her? even to the point of saying you're going to love me. Another interesting little tidbit I discovered when rewatching this episode is how some of the little actions of the main six actually feed into the other plot lines. Like when Rainbow Dash smashes into another pony, causing him to spill his drink. And later on, that same spill on the floor leads into Prince Blueblood using Rarity's cloak to soak it up. I also like how Pinky's song so joyfully explains the predicaments of all the others here. It helps to move the plot along quickly without losing any story elements along the way. And we can also see here that Pinky hasn't quite yet learned about being sensitive to what others think is fun. Makes me appreciate all the more when she does show that sensitivity later on in the series. Of course, one of the greatest moments of this episode is when all the various plot lines come together, creating quite the entertaining disaster. Which brings a bit of a surprising moment when Celestia tells them all to run. An interesting choice for Equestria's ruler. And the scene comes to an end by completing the Cinderella parody with leaving the glass slipper. And a rather hilarious reaction from Rarity when she thinks there is even the slightest chance that the prince might come and find her. The episode comes to an end with a lesson about how friends can turn even the worst of times into something pretty great. And that's a really nice moral. How the best people in your life can help you get through the worst moments in your life, as shown by how they are all able to laugh it off at the end of the evening. And even Princess Celestia shows a lot of wisdom by showing such a positive reaction to such a disastrous evening. I'm sure that she'll end up having to deal with a lot of angry partygoers who would demand to know who was responsible for the incident. And I'm sure that she'll be handling the situation with grace and respect, which in turn would actually help others to do the same. I've mentioned before about how Princess Celestia shows a great deal of mercy in her rule, and this is another good example of just that. I wouldn't think that any of the main six would learn any more of a lesson here by being punished for their unintentional destruction. And given Celestia's intent with Twilight learning the magic of friendship, I'm sure that she would want to do everything in her power to strengthen that bond. Overall, The Best Night Ever is still a fantastic example of what makes MLP so entertaining and unique. And I think this is one of the best written episodes because of how all the various plot lines actually do fit together in little ways throughout the story. Even with all the build-up they had been doing throughout Season 1, you can still come into this episode without any prior knowledge of the series and easily understand everything going on. And it continues to get better every time I watch it. What are your thoughts about The Best Night Ever? Do you think this episode works with all these various elements interacting? Or is there something here that you think doesn't help the episode overall? I would like to hear your thoughts about The Best Night Ever, and here's to hoping for another future episode with various plot lines that all fit together in the end. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.